Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Wrench. I am your host, Jay Goninen. For this week's episode, we are bringing back a familiar guest and a great partner of ours, Darin Damron, who is the Regional Vice President at Jasper Engines and Transmissions. The last time we had Darin on as a guest, we discussed developing strong habits and the importance of healthy habits. Links to Darin's previous episode of Beyond the Wrench can be found in the show notes. Darin, it is awesome to have you back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be here, Jay. I'm just awesome to be a part of your program and back on the show. Thanks for having me back.
Your first podcast was really popular, and it's still one. I've listened to it probably 3 times, and believe me, it has nothing to do with me being on that podcast as to why I listened to it. That was a really, really good one, and I think probably pretty impactful to a lot of people. So I think what we're going to talk about today are goals and really kind of maybe extend the conversation that we had before on the habit side. So excited for that. But what's the latest with you? What's been going on?
Well, we just wrapped up a great 2022. I know a lot of our customers had an awesome 2022 as well. Personally, my region finished number 1. So for the second year in a row, so extremely proud of that. And, my wife and I have got a new baby on the way. So that's kid number 5 and extremely excited about that.
Just a few things going on.
Just a little.
Well, I think the cool part about all of these conversations that you and I have, whether it's on the podcast or just in general conversation, every time I talk to you, I'm learning something. I'm learning something about habits. I'm learning something about goals. You are very disciplined, and we talked about that in the last podcast. And goals are kind of in the same bucket as habits in terms of taking discipline to actually take those goals seriously, to actually try to go after those goals. So I want to start by asking a question about why goals are important to you and how this came about, right? Like, what was it that when you sat down, and maybe this is back from your football days, or I don't know how this came about, but explain to me why goals are important to you and really what drives you to maintain those goals.
Well, they're extremely important because, first of all, I like to win. I've been a competitor my entire life. I've been in sports my entire life. And if you set the right goals and they're going to equal, you winning in some sort of way, whether it's personal, small goals or, team goals or whatever that is, that's going to impact the outcome. So, reaching that. But what I love most, and I definitely want to get this across today, goals are important, but it's the growth, it's the journey to the goals that I'm extremely in love with. We can set goals, but if we don't take a path and we don't set that path out and we don't go on that journey, well, we may not attain that goal. What did we learn? What did we learn from that? So what's more important than just setting a goal, a number of growth, hitting some type of weight loss or anything like that, is it's the path that you're going to take, the journey that you're going to take. That's where we learn, and that's what I'm in love with. That's why I continuously am trying to grow, because I just love the journey.
Was that always the case?
No, really personally, it hit me. I've always been in some type of leadership role because of athletics and things like that. But, early in my professional career, when I was a young man, we're talking going on 18 years ago now. I was married young, and the marriage didn't work out. And because of the laws of the state, my ex-wife was able to take my son, to Pennsylvania. And we were living in Georgia at the time. And so I go from a 2-income home to a 1-income home. And now, and I was a service manager at a transmission shop. And at that point in time, I was paid salary. I wasn't paid commission. I didn't quite understand that yet and getting that. And, it was extremely hard for me to get to my son. And the first trip after he was taken to Pennsylvania, it was a couple months into it, and Wendy's had a promotion. If you saved these Wendy's cups, they would give you airplane points to be able to get an airplane ride. And I found myself getting friends bringing me cups. Fortunately, social media wasn't out then, so you couldn't put that blast out there. And but I was going to Wendy's locations, and I was in their dumpster, in their garbage can, getting these cups. And that was how I was able to get to my son, because the most important thing was being a father to him. But through that process, I was like, I can no longer be in this position. I have to be able to get to my son any way and any time that I can, and because he needs me. And that caused me to kind of flip a switch in my life, as professionally as well. I have to put myself in a position professionally that if I need to book a plane ticket, there's no obstacles keeping me from doing that. And that's where I'm at today.
Wow. I mean, you think about how humbling of an experience that probably was. And, I can't imagine that difficulty and the want to get there, not being able to get there, and then finding a path when you had a fixed income where you couldn't do anything differently. And I have to believe that probably helped you want to go to the commission side, right? Or to be able to control your own destiny a little
Absolutely.
bit.
Absolutely. I had to be able to, the effort that I put in, had to be the result had to match that. And the only way to do that was to get to the commission side, to put myself in that type of position. Luckily I was able to find Jasper. They found me, because that switch had flipped, and, I started making changes in the garage that I was working in. And it was noticeable, when the vendors came in and when the customers came in, and with my technicians and with the owner of the business, so on and so forth. But it was the reason that goal worked, that made that happen, so hold on to that. My reason was massive. I've got to have the money to be a great father to my son. And that's what I held on to. If it was any other goal and I didn't have a reason like that behind it, I probably wouldn't have reached it. But I took that lesson, and now I can apply that to every goal that I set in my life. I look for that reason, for me to be able to reach those goals. And like I shared earlier, we've got child number 5 on the way. So I've got some reasons.
Yeah, a lot of reasons. Yeah. And I think it helps to go, I'm very familiar with Jasper. They're a great partner of ours. And you can sense when you walk in the building, into the factory, that, purpose is kind of built in, right? Like you're working for a purpose-driven organization as well, which I have to imagine helps out exponentially.
I tell you, absolutely. So, they took this person in myself, that had this fire inside of him, and that culture and that purpose that they have, they molded it, and really, formed what I've become, and they provide that atmosphere for that to be able to happen. And there's just nothing like the Jasper culture. First and foremost, we're we're a Christian company. So there's higher standards, higher accountability, the way we treat our customers, the way we treat ourselves, how we communicate, and how we work. We put our worship into our work. So it's extremely, it's an honor to be a part of something like that, and to be able to learn and to add and bring value to it as well.
Yeah, there's not many people that I think just fit a company much better than you fit Jasper. I think there's a lot of parallels there. Now, let's kind of segue that into goal setting as a whole, right? And this is a fascinating topic. We're just after the start of the new year. I'm sure a lot of people set goals, many of which are probably already gone and not being accomplished. Talk to me about how you even state your goals to start with. Are you just writing it in a notebook and keeping that around, or how do you keep them visible so that you remember that they're there? Obviously, there's some level of internal drive with you, but give me an idea of how you keep those front of mind.
So, a process that I learned years ago, and some of our managers still use it at Jasper, some don't. I implemented it company-wide this January. I shared it with my other RVPs, and they've implemented it with their reps. And so it's kind of like going to be our standardized thing. But it's called mind mapping. And, it's been around for a really long time. I'm not reinventing the wheel. But it's something that I've done religiously year after year after year for a decade now. And it really helps you, first of all, decide what that goal is going to be, and then to organize and break that goal down. And so you can focus on the journey of that goal. The cool thing about it is that, I set that number in the middle of that circle. So imagine you draw a circle in the middle piece of a paper, and you've got this number. I want to grow 10%. Well, how do you do that? You go in different directions. Like with us last year, I implemented a lot of things, but I focused on reps and I focused on our customers. So there was things that I focused on with my reps, and there was things that I focused on with my customers. So out of that center circle, I drew lines to other circles that were all impacted the reps, and then broke them down. Same thing with the customers. So basically, you're just taking a journey and breaking these goals all the way down into little sub goals, and breaking it even all down further till the very, very end, so you can track it and hold it accountable. The neat thing about it is I don't even look at the number again. I'm just focused on the journey, and the journey takes care of it. The goal is met at the end of the year.
So you're starting off with maybe your ambitious goal. What do they call it? The BHAG, the big hairy.
BHAG, big hairy audacious goal.
BHAG. There you go. Yeah, BHAG. Ambitious, and I don't know, but the BHAG. So you start off with that ambitious goal, and then you kind of break it down, and you're breaking it down by, in order to get this goal, I need to do this thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a lot of independent garages that are listening to us, technicians that are part of that, or even dealerships, service managers, directors that are listening to us right now. So let me kind of use that as an example. So for an independent garage or a dealership, the side of their business where they're repairing the vehicles, their maintenance, repair side of their business, for them to grow, they can only focus on two things. That's bring in more customers or increase their average RO. So that's the two things that an IGO or a dealership or a side part of the business can do. Now, we've got that in the middle. So let's say they want to grow 10%, right? And they got to focus on bringing in more customers, and they got to focus on increasing their RO. So there's your two little sub circles from there. Okay, well, how do they break that down? So I just made some notes. So that breaks down into marketing. So there's another circle. Technicians, there's another one. Service riders, there's another one. And then personal leadership for the leader. So you've got 4 breaking off of those 2. Now you got to go to your marketing. So what are you looking at? Shop appearance, local and community, your own line, that type of thing. So then you can break down the shop appearance. What needs to be addressed? Okay. Your community marketing, radio, television, mailers, sponsorships, your own line, your SEO, your websites, your social media. So you see how it just kind of breaks down further and further. Then you go to your technician side of things. So training, online and in person, meetings, weekly and monthly, inspection processes. You got to standardize those. You got to hold them accountable. Quality control, test drives, shop foreman inspections, tracking the comebacks, hiring and developing. You got to look at your hiring platforms, your interview process, your onboarding, your temperature checks, your reviews after a month, after a quarter, after a year, those type of things. Then you look at your service riders. You got personality index testing, training, communication skills, prioritizing, their skills, their EQ development, so their emotional intelligence. So, and then you can look at your personal development. You got to get a mentor, you got to read, you got a podcast, you got to join a 20 group or associations, and then you got to take that time to reflect. So you break it all down, and then you got to break those all down. So, I mean, really to mind map thoroughly, it can take a week, for you just sitting and reflecting and focusing on how am I going to reach this BHAG, this big, hairy, audacious goal.
That's interesting. And when you look at that and you start to break it down, how do you not become overwhelmed, right? Because there's a lot of things that are going to go into reaching your ultimate goals. And when you start to read through that and look at all of those different sectors, I think it can be really overwhelming to try and keep up with those things. So how do you kind of shape your mind so that you're not overwhelmed by it, that you're looking at them and almost inspired by them rather than being overwhelmed by them?
Well, I think it's understanding the process first and foremost. And I learned this with my own sales team. So when I launched out, hey, we're all going to mind map, it was a mess. So I shot them some work instructions and just kind of sat back and see what happened. 90%, it really, the effort wasn't there, and it's like anything, we hear something new, we hear about a new process or something like that, and we automatically want to start, it's human nature, we want to start picking it apart or making excuses, or because of fear of something new, we want to not try it, not even attempt it. We want to turn away from it. But the cool thing about this process, it's an organizing of your thoughts and your ideas. So if you dive into it and you give it the time and effort that it needs, it actually is extremely simple. I read a list to you that seemed like it was long and seemed like it took a lot, right? Honestly, it not at all. When you break it down into these little different sections and then subsections, it organizes those thoughts beautifully, and you're like, man, I really can do this. I've just got to focus in these areas, and then you just assign the time to it.
And I think that helps put it in more bite-sized pieces, so it doesn't seem like, when you do have those big categories. And I think that's where a lot of people lose it when they're goal setting, is they'll set the goal but not breaking it down any further than just setting the goal. And I think when I was in corporate America, they were very big on making SMART goals, right? And being able to, be very specific on the goals that you're setting. And I think that was such a good thing for me to learn at an early age, was that, it's great to set a goal, but unless you've got some type of detail around it, you're not, you're probably not going to hit anything, right? Or you'll very loosely hit things. And I think that is such an important piece, is to break it down so you're not overwhelmed.
Yeah, and you're making a great point. If you don't break it down, if you don't take it in, break it down in these bite-sized chunks, most likely you're going to get discouraged throughout the year, and you're going to stop attempting to reach that goal. Because you're just focused on this big number, this BHAG, this big number. And there's ups and downs, there's ebb and flows, through your energy levels, personally, professionally. There's different seasons within the year that impact our industry and your industry that you're in. And if you're just focusing on the end and not the journey, not the bite-sized pieces, you're going to get discouraged and you're not going to reach that goal. Now, over the last couple of years, our industry has been spoiled because everybody reached their goal without even trying. They blew their goals away because of what happened in our industry over the last couple of years. So they didn't learn anything.
Good point.
They didn't focus on the journey. So they didn't learn from what happened these past 2 years. And I'm not talking like everybody, but most people,
a lot of people,
they didn't learn those lessons. And so what are they going to do this year? When we're seeing things like, some new car sales coming back up, but the depreciation has risen greatly. Those things are going to, because of interest amounts and things like that, those things are going to greatly impact, the repair industry and our industry as a whole. So what are you going to do this year when it's not like shooting fish in a barrel? When the phone's not ringing like it was, and parts continue to be challenging and things like that. You didn't take a journey. You didn't learn it. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you're digging yourself a hole. And, I think one of the cool parts is if anybody that's listening hasn't done this before in sitting down and setting goals, is I think it's such an inspirational time where you can sit and in thought and be able to really even understand what it is that you want, right? Because I think there's some folks where they're just like, I don't even know what I'd put down as my BHAG, right? I don't know what I would put as my big, hairy, audacious goal, ambitious goal. And I do think having an understanding of what you truly want, and you had that purpose with your son, right? And being able to go through that process. I think there's a lot of people that maybe don't know that. They don't know what their North Star is. They don't know, maybe they're kind of walking through life a little blindly. Would you have any advice for somebody that maybe is kind of, I don't know, in the middle there, not being able to really truly understand what it is that they want?
Yeah, I mean, it's that time of self-reflection. You've got to find out what is extremely important to you. When you're tired or in a bad mood or hungry or whatever it may be, or facing a completely incredible challenge, what can you focus on that's going to make you no excuses, and I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to push through it. That's different for everybody. For some people, it's just innate to them that they're competitive, and that's just who they are, right? For some, it has to be their relationship, their children, their spouse, their God, so to speak. Some it has to be their team, their company that they work for. They're just, they love them so much that they want to do the best that they can for them. So you have to really take time to find out what that is for you. And you've got to hold on to that, because that's what's going to push you through all these different times and these challenging times. And then also when there's good times, you're holding on it too, so you don't get lackadaisical and you don't take things for granted, right? We really, a lot of times, we get complacent when we're reaching our goals and things are going easy. So you got to hold on to that thing that drove you when things were not going good and things were not easy, because life is full of seasons. And the good seasons are going to end. There's going to be a bad season that comes up after it. It's just part of it.
Boy, is that ever true? That the part about, I think your team, the Alabama Crimson Tide, and Nick Saban, what does he always say about success? Like he doesn't like to really celebrate the success poison. Because he thinks rat poison. There you go. Yeah. Yes. And it's true. I mean, think about him and how successful he is, and how much effort he's probably had to put into being somewhat, I guess, bringing himself back down to earth. Because when you're winning national championships and everything seems great and everybody wants a part of your time, I'm guessing it's probably pretty easy to take yourself into that mindset of, hey, you know what, this is pretty nice. I don't have to do anything.
It's extremely easy, and I've experienced that in my past. When I was just a branch manager for Jasper, we had an extreme amount of success. And, we won awards multiple years in a row that other branches had never done, and really set the bar and a standard with that. And I kind of just expected it every single year. And then I went through a season of a couple of years because my leaders had left. So I had a bunch of new hires and I had to retrain those hires. And guess what? Winning didn't come as easy. So I had to learn those hard lessons that you can't take that success and stuff for granted. You have to hold on to it, and you have to always keep growing and pushing. And for the people that are listening that have their reason, let's say that they know what their reason is. A great process for you to do at the end of every year is to look back at everything that happened that year. I love my digital calendar. So one thing I do is I go back through that digital calendar. It saves all of my meetings, all of my Zoom meetings, my team meetings, all the appointments that I've had. And I literally look at every single one of those and reflect, was that valuable? Did I bring value to them? Did they bring value to me? Is this something that I need to continue? Did I reach this? Did this work for me this year? Or do I need to put more effort into it next year, or move away from it because it just wasn't worth the time? So take that time. If you've got your reason, take that time to reflect on the previous year. And then that way, what you need to focus on this year to continue growing. Keep doing the things that you're doing, going on that journey, but add to it. Don't ever stop growing and adding to it.
That's really good advice. I honestly, the calendar thing, my calendar is always stacked full, on Gmail or whatever it is, that Google Calendar, that's what it is, Google Calendar. And to be able to go back and reflect on everything that you've done and really evaluate if it's successful or not, or if it brings value to you, or you're bringing value to somebody else, that's really, really good advice.
We just launched our new weekly game on Shop Talk, The Loneliest Number. Each week, we will post short poll questions on Shop Talk about industry topics. Technicians who answer the questions will earn points to play the game and get a chance to win our $1,000 weekly prize. $500 will go to the lucky winner, and the other $500 will go to a local high school program picked by the winner. Start playing now at WrenchWay.com/ShopTalk. Link is in the show notes.
And I want to take that a step further now, right? So say we've sat down, we've laid out our goals, and we're really starting to work at them, and maybe you get discouraged right away, but I want to learn more about the execution side of goal setting, right? So it's really great that you've set your goals, you've written them down. What's the key to making sure that you actually obtain those goals and you actually do those things that you need to do in order to reach those goals?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, it just comes down to discipline and consistency. No matter what, you set the times that you're going to do these things or to review these things or track these things and hold them accountable. You set those times, and no matter what, you hit that. You make that happen, and just stay consistent with it. You can't take your foot off the gas pedal with it, or the finger off the pulse, so to speak. You just have to stay consistent. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to do these things and not focus on them. So you've got to delegate time to it, and you've got to make sure if it's something that needs to be done every day, every week, every month, that you give it that time and you put that in your calendar.
I think there's a lot of people that struggle with that, right? It's similar to what we talked about when we did the last podcast on habits, because those habits really help you build into these goals, right? I think there's a lot of, if you're building healthy habits and you're doing things the right way, the goals are going to come a lot easier than if you don't. And the consistency, I think, is the killer with most people. You're one of the most disciplined people I know, and it's always fun to learn from you on that consistency side, because I think that's the hardest part. When you get into work every day and you're battling emails and you're battling phone calls and you're going through your day-to-day life, and those things do contribute to your goal, because it might be in sales, or for those technicians that are out there, consistency and showing up on time and being there every single day, ready to work when the clock, strikes 8, you're rolling, right? But things happen too, right? You've got, a baby on the way. You know what that experience is like when the baby's up crying all night, and it's really hard to get yourself in a place mentally to be able to execute on your goals. Right. And I want to learn more about that, right? Because this isn't your first child. Right. You've been through that rodeo quite a few times at this point. How do you do that to the point to where you are just so mentally drained and you feel like you're out of it, and you're not having, maybe you're having conversations, but the conversations aren't as quality of conversations because you're mentally, you've been up the entire night trying to get a baby to sleep, right? There's so many people that battle that. There's so many people that have different things that they're battling, and I'm interested to learn that piece. When you're not feeling like it, when you're not feeling great, what is it that makes you go, and how do you get your mind right so that you actually talk like a normal human being?
Well, I'll tell you two things. I'm going to make it sound extremely simple, right? I know it's not always simple, but one, it boils down to passion. It's how you look at things. It's not that I have to do these things. I get to do these things, right? I get to be a father that gets to comfort his child in the middle of the night. I get to give my wife a break. I get to do those things. So I don't look at those as kind of situation. But it's because I had that taken from me that I hold on to that, right? So I look at it, my mind, my perception of it is completely different than other people that have never experienced that loss. So their gratitude, I'm not going to say they're not grateful for their children, but they're just looking at it a little bit differently. So, try to change your mindset on how you're looking at these things that you have to do. It's not that you have to do them. It's that you get to do them, and be grateful for that. The things that we have passion for, you'll find out that you really have plenty of energy for. And it's the things that we don't have passion for is when we start to feel mentally exhausted and tired and things like that. It's because you're out of position in those, so it's draining you, kind of thing. So that's when you have to set yourself up for success. A practice that we do at the factory, for instance, the last unit that pod builds that day, right? As soon as it goes through, everybody in that pod prepares to start the next unit the very next morning. They set all their tooling up, their gloves in the right place, everything that they need, everything's in position. So when that bell rings in the morning, they're set up for success. They're starting out on the right foot. It's the same thing with if you want to improve your health. Your time to work out is early in the morning. You set yourself up the night before. You put yourself in a position to go to bed, at the right time. You cut off the phone, you cut off the TV, you read a book, something like that. And you set your workout clothes and your BCAA or protein drink or whatever you do, you set it up and you get it ready. So all you got to do is roll out of bed and get it on. It's in the gym bag already, so you got to set yourself up for success for you to continue to do it. As far as like some of these things that I do every day, it's a to-do list. I prepare a to-do list every single night. So all I have to do in the morning when I get up is just start checking things off the box. And those are little victories that just keep me going throughout the day. I know I've got these 15 things I've got to do. Check, 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 check. And if a surprise or curveball happens, I've got the time and energy to handle that throughout the day as well. And all I got is 3 more things to do. So, you got to set those to-do lists up, those checklists, and be ready for success with it.
Are you a paper guy or an electronics guy when it comes to stating, like to writing out your to-do list?
So 3 years ago, I was still using the Franklin Covey binder, daily, big rocks, little rocks. So I've been through that training. Jasper put me through that training 17 years ago. So that tells you how long I've been doing these things. And, so I was on paper reordering the fill, getting it refilled every single year, the same binder. And 3 years ago, I found myself doing both. I was using my calendar on my iPad and my phone. And it was like, I'm literally creating triple work for myself. and it was so, I actually had a little ceremony to put the Franklin Covey, binder to the side and never reorder again.
Should have framed that thing and put it on the wall.
And at least once a week, Franklin Covey sends me a text, with an update trying to get me to reorder. So they're like, they miss me. I know they do. Right. But, I buried it. We had a ceremony. It's over. So I do everything electronically now, and it makes it really easy to go back and reflect on it as well. And it makes it easy to check those boxes. I can just hit the check box and mark them off the calendar.
What do you use in the electronic format? What is it? You're just through your calendar? Is it through? How do you get your to-do list out there?
I keep it very, very simple. I'm an iPhone person, so I can't tell you what a Droid has, but iPhone has notes, and I've got a titled to-do list, and every night I just fill it out. And my calendar, everything electronically. I schedule appointments. That's all in the calendar. The to-do list is the other things that I need to do and make sure that they get done.
You hit on a point earlier that I think is very important, which is your mindset and having a positive mindset. And there are going to be obstacles that you're going to face every single day, every single year. It's part of life. There are obstacles. How do you keep a positive mindset to that? And you had mentioned talking about in your head. I feel like this is something that you almost have to train your brain to do, is to say, I get to do this. I get to do this. How do you do that? Like, how do you train yourself to stay in that positive mindset, which can be really, really hard to do at times?
It's 100% my spiritual growth, 100%. So because of where I'm at spiritually, I can look at a good situation and be grateful for that and the lessons that I learned. But I can also look at a bad situation, a death, a health crisis, a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship. I've been through it all. My wife and I have been struggling to conceive, our child that we're blessed to have in her womb now for the last 3 years. And, it was tough. It was tough to see her cry every single month. But what I hold on to is that, first of all, I had faith that it was going to work out. I just knew that it was going to, and it did. And also, I see her differently as a mom. I saw her love a child that wasn't even created yet, and the effort that she put into that. So I'm so grateful that I can look at my wife differently now than what I did 3 years ago. Because of that journey that we've been through the last few years, as difficult as it is, it completely changed the outlook that I have for her.
Another pretty big why. I mean, and like you hear about the power of why, and knowing that, I think it's very interesting to me that your journey has kind of shaped the way that you think. And I think so many of us are that way, right? Where your journey and what you've gone through and all of those obstacles of everything that you've had to do over the course of your life is what makes you. Like, that's what hardens you. That's what makes you stronger. And that's what makes you able to take on these challenges. And I don't know if personally we give ourselves enough credit, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff that all of us have been through, and that is positioning you to be able to meet these goals and to be able to handle life in a way that is something you can be proud of, right? And I think, I hear so many people talk, whether it's employees or friends, and really have that mentality of just kind of being beaten down, right? And not really excited. And it's heartbreaking to see that, because it is something where I'm sure it is tough to pull yourself out of bed. I'm sure it is tough to go through the daily grind if you're miserable. And so much of it is mindset and being able to get your mind in the right position. And I love the fact that you've really kind of adapted your brain to the I get to do these things, because we're also blessed in so many different ways, and we don't truly understand it a lot of times. We don't understand that we're in a good position. How often do we go out and read a message board on Facebook, or like a Facebook group where it's just technicians just saying how much they hate their job, they hate their employer. And when I look at that, I'm like, if they just took maybe a little bit different mindset to this, it might help them a lot.
Yeah. It's really just being aware, being aware of the position and the situation that you're in. And man, what lesson do I need to learn from this? What am I being taught right now? It's not that we're being punished or anything like that. There's no such thing as karma or anything like that. It's, what am I being prepared for later on in life? Or is this preparing me for that tougher situation that I may go to? Or is it preparing me for the ability to teach somebody else so they don't go through that, and to help them avoid and to serve them? So you got to look at the situations that you're in life and pull that lesson out of them so you can pass it on, or be prepared for the next time that you're going to go through a difficult season, so it's not as difficult on you. And I'm always looking at it that way. The other thing I am too is, as I connect myself, being in the Jacksonville market, I'm in a military town. I'm surrounded by wonderful military leaders and groups and organizations, and, Operation New Uniform and Wounded Warrior and different things like that. I'm connected with Jason Redman. These are people that have gone through some extremely, extremely difficult times, and they're overcoming and they're making it through. Now, sometimes they don't, and we hear about those stories and things like that. But the lesson that teaches me, and the humility that gives me, is no matter what I'm going through, there's somebody else that went through something way worse. And at least that didn't happen to me. Let me use what they learned and how they overcome it as fuel for myself. So I feed off of that, and I try to learn that. Like, how do you overcome getting shot 8 times? And you did it intentionally. You did it for me. You sacrificed yourself for me and for your partner next to you. And I'm so thankful and grateful for that our military does that. So I look at these figures and say no excuses in my own life.
That's great. I think what you just said there is something I wish I would have understood earlier in my career is, be patient. I was not a patient person, still not an overly patient person, but when you're younger in your career and I think everybody's aspiring to jump up the ladder as fast as they can, right? And I think in some ways we've positioned that mindset that, you want to jump. And what you miss out on is that journey that you talked about earlier, where those are the growth opportunities. That's where you're actually going to expand your knowledge. That's where you're going to expand your leadership capability. There's technicians out there that want to move up the ladder, or even say a service manager wants to be a service director, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of aspirations from a lot of people, And all they're looking at is the fact that they're not in that position yet, rather than what can I do to prepare myself for that position? What can I do to get my habits right? What can I do to get my goal setting right and get my life in order so I can manage myself before I'm putting, myself in front of a bunch of people and leading them, right? And when I look back to my early career, that is one of the things that I frankly stunk at. Like, I just wasn't great at it. So rather than the mindset of I just need to get there, I need to get there as fast as possible, it's more of like, that's where that goal setting is so critically important, because then you can maybe start to understand what you're going to need to do to progress to that next level.
I tell you, when you're just looking at the future, you're missing what's happening right here and now. You're missing the lessons that you need to learn. You do become ungrateful. You do become cancerous to the company that you're working with, because you're constantly feeling like you're not getting what you deserve and you're not in the position that you're supposed to be in. And I tell you, I went through that in a brief period and had to learn some hard lessons in my Jasper career. Luckily, Joe McDonald, our VP, was extremely patient with me. He knew what the future could be, but there were some lessons that I had to learn. Now, when I flipped that switch and made that decision to be at peace where I was at and put my heart into it, everything changed. When I focused on my heart being here on this journey that I was on and giving it 110% and not looking beyond, when I was just looking at that journey, everything changed. The clarity, the transparency, it all started making sense. And then Jasper said, he's ready.
It's funny how life has a way of telling you that, isn't it?
So sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn. Absolutely.
I think I'm a big fan of the show The Office, and Andy Bernard in one episode says something to the effect of, I wish we knew they were the good old days before we were out of the good old days, when we were there, right? And I totally botched that quote, but it is such a great lesson in learning to be present and being able to focus on those activities that are going to drive those goals and really be able to, I should rephrase that. The importance of being present, I think, is super important when it comes to goal setting, because if you just think you're going to get to that goal by not doing anything, if you desire to lose 25 pounds in 2023 and you haven't laid out any plan as to how you're going to do that, or if you stink at one habit, how are you going to defeat that habit? Oftentimes it's just simply trying to defeat the person in the mirror, right? Like you've got to be able to get over that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what's so funny is, I'm so grateful to be in the position that I'm at with Jasper now. But you see, I'm in the office. We get a lot of times we're out in the car with our reps in our field and we're calling on higher level accounts from my position, those type of things, those national fleet directors and owners and things like that. But you know what I miss, and I'm envious of it, is I miss those 13 to 15 conversations with those independent garage owners every single day, going out to lunch with them, taking them to the ball game, going fishing with them, cooking them steaks, when they hit an award and things like that. Those are things that I don't get to take part of much anymore. So I'm envious. And you talk about like just, my reps that are looking at my position and they want to be here and they're not focused on what they get to do every single day, man, they're missing making those memories. And, those are things that I hold on to, is I miss that time with those customers.
Isn't that funny how your short-term memory focuses on that customer complaint or that person that was dissatisfied with something that you had done? But when you look back at it, from a 20-year window or a 10-year window, and you're looking back, that's not necessarily the stuff that you remember. You remember those, like you said, the calls. And I think I'm the same way where, at the time it's like, oh man, I'm going to get I was a manufacturer's rep. And I remember going into the dealerships and being like, I know this dealership's it's gonna suck to go into, but you've almost set yourself up for like a negative thought process when you're going in, and then you do go in and probably get chewed out for something, and then you let that really I did anyways, let that really impact me. Yet hindsight and looking back now, 10 to 15 years ago, I don't even remember who those customers were. Like, I do remember the relationships of the great customers that we had, and I do, still have relationships with some of those folks. And I think that short-term memory, that basically, looking back over the past year, I think a lot of times we do focus on the negative pieces of that. But when when we're all 85 years old and looking back on our lives, that's not the stuff that's going to come to mind. It's going to be the good stuff. It's going to be the stuff that, that maybe there are some stuff that you'll regret doing or not doing. But I do think you look back at the relationships you grew over the years, and I take so much pride in that, and how many friends from this industry that I've been able to get over the years, and just genuinely great relationships. And that's the stuff that I take out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look from like a garage side of things. Customers go to a garage, they all expect to, have their car repaired correctly. They all, expect a fair price. If there's a warranty, they expect it to be taken care of. Great. That's not what makes you a great shop. That's not what makes you a great technician. It's that relationship that you build with some of those customers and your associates that are alongside of you, the technicians that are working alongside of you, the memories that you guys to make together. It's the lady that you know that her older dog passed away, and you take her home and you bury her dog for her, because you know your customer so well and you have that relationship. It's the funny time when all the technicians had to get together and push the massive pickup truck into the bay, and one of the guys fell and his face hit a mud puddle or something. Those are the things that you hold on to, and the memories that you're going to look back on and smile later on in life.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Wrench. We'd like to take a minute to talk about this week's sponsor, Jasper Engines and Transmissions. Okay, your customer's engine or transmission has failed, but now is not the time for them to trade in their vehicle, not without a working engine or transmission. Besides, would they have kept their vehicle another 3 to 5 years if their engine or transmission had not let them down? If you answered yes, then Jasper Engines and Transmissions is your choice to give your customer vehicles new life and many thousands of miles of enjoyable driving performance. When considering the high cost of a new or newer used vehicle, there's a pretty good case to be made for replacing a drivetrain component that has failed or is delivering poor performance. Rather than trading in their car, truck, van, or SUV, install a quality remanufactured Jasper product for less than your customer would have to invest in a new vehicle or a newer used vehicle. Check out their website at jasperengines.com to learn more about the money-saving value of Jasper.
How does goal setting play into what your legacy will eventually be?
Well, I hope when I'm all done with this, I hope that my legacy is that I pass this on to others, that I helped them grow, that it flipped a switch into their mind. And, I made this point to my wife last night. I lead our life groups at church. And we just got through, doing this one study, and we're leaving. But before I left, my pastor's son, I've given him like 3 knives over the last few years. So every now and then Jasper comes out with a cool knife, and it's kind of been our thing. I'm like, hey, I got a new knife for you. So I went to the trunk of my car and I gave him that knife. And we kind of looked at our genealogy or our salvation before it began, because we were looking back towards Abraham. And everybody kind of talked about who influenced their life and who influenced that in their life. And I told my wife on the drive home last night, I said, I wonder if Colton's going to be 50 years old, 40 years old in a life group talking about, his old crazy life group leader that used to give him knives, that kind of thing. So I hope that the journey that I'm on, the lessons I'm learning that I pass down, I hope that that's what my legacy is that they hold on to that, and they teach that to other people, whether they give me credit for it or not. It doesn't matter. I wrote down the acronym growth, and I wanted to share that with you. And it's growth for the team. So G is give your team opportunities to grow, right? R is recognize each person's growth needs. You're the leader. It's your responsibility to do that. O is for open up opportunities for them to grow. You've got to create those opportunities. T is teach them to learn from that experience. I always say knowledge is not power. It's evaluated knowledge is power. So you got to teach them to learn from that. And H is to help them bring value to their teammates. So just like I'm trying to bring value to my customers and to my teammates and, my partners in the industry, I want them to take that and to take that value and pay that forward and bring value to others as well.
That's good. That is very good. It will definitely need to listen back to that and write it all out, because I do think it's something that allows you to think through. If you were to take some time and actually think through that acronym and be able to dissect it a little bit, and then for those leaders that are out there listening, be able to look at your own team and maybe even evaluate one by one, how do they fit into this acronym, and how can I better lead them? I think that's something that we're missing in our industry a lot, is maybe that stepping back and looking at our people and understanding, one, that they're all different people. Not everybody's going to fit in the same box. And then two, how do you grow them from there, knowing that that's your responsibility as a leader? And I think using an acronym like that, oftentimes I think, I came from corporate America. We use acronyms for everything. But being able to actually take a second and stand back and look at that acronym and be able to dissect your people and be able to understand where they stand in that, in all of those categories, is a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, it boils down to spending time with them. I mean, that's the key. The first thing I did when I got promoted to being a regional vice president was not implement all these great ideas and all the things that I was doing in my branches. The first 6 months, I just went and got in the car with every one of my folks and just spent time with them and built trust and broke down barriers and eliminated any kind of false ideas that they might have had about me because of rumors. And I'm, I drive them hard, and I'm a micromanager and all these things. And then when they spend time with me, they realize, oh man, none of that's true. He just wants me to be successful and make the most money that I can make and be the best person that I can be. And when they see that, then they'll run through walls for you. They'll go through fire and walk over glass for you because they know that you'll do that for them.
And you're helping them set goals. And really, I think it is so important to have them understand why they're having goals or what those goals are leading to. And in business, I think it's really easy to say, I think this is why a lot of people feel like they're just a number, right? Is because they'll go into those goal conversations and it's a revenue number. It's a productivity number. It's something that is business driven. And as a leader, I really feel like you've got to be able to connect the dots between that and them growing as an individual. And again, I feel like that's something that a lot of business leaders fail at, is to connect the two. They're so driven by that one number that they don't maybe think about the individual as much or their growth and progression. And to me, in what I see in our industry, I feel like that's a huge area of opportunity for those that are listening. And it doesn't matter if you're a technician in the shop, if it doesn't matter if you're a service writer, service manager, owner, whatever you are, being able to understand the why, both for you and the other people that are around you, is so powerful.
And I tell you, I focus a great amount of my time on personal development for myself and my team. A great amount. And I'm trying to teach them how to do that too. One of the goals that I had this coming into this year is I wanted to grow their leadership, their EQ. And so I created a collaborated spreadsheet where they can go on and add podcasts and books that they're consuming, the links to them and the summary on what they consumed. And this is just a database that's just going to continue to grow. And they have to mention those things in their meetings when they have 2 branch meetings a month. They got to bring those up. So these are my leaders that are doing this. So that was one of my main goals, is if I can grow them personally, the business stuff takes care of itself because they're ready for it. And no matter what I want to implement, they'll handle that, and they can implement it easily because of the person that they have become.
What would you say to that person that's out there listening that's maybe never set goals, maybe thinks setting goals is kind of a corny, just something they taught you in school or taught you somewhere along the lines at some seminar, but don't really take it seriously?
Yeah. That's a struggle. That's a really, really tough one, because that's a lot, and it's because they don't teach goals in school. You think about through
that's true.
Elementary,
Yes.
Junior high, high school, nobody taught you goals. Now, they might have exposed you to it if you were an athlete or a part of some type of academia, competition team or something like that, but they didn't specifically teach you about goals. So it's a pandemic, you might say, for the whole world, that people really go through life and they don't understand goals and how to reach those and how to take those journeys. I start simple, start small. It's like if you're out of shape and you want to get into shape, you don't go to a CrossFit gym and kill it. You'll never go back and you'll never do anything else, and you probably won't be able to move for a month. You've got to start small. You got to start with a step. You got to walk. Start walking, get a daily, then turn it into a workout after a few weeks, and twice a week, then 3 times, 4 times, 5. And then after you've got a good habits with that, then look at the meal side. Meals the nutrition side is the key, but it's the most difficult, time consuming, hard thing to understand. So get the habits down first on the exercise. And then, so I would say you got to really start slow on all of these things. And then over time, it can develop into this crazy machine that I've got going on in my head.
It's a pretty darn good machine, I tell you that. And for those of you that are listening and not watching, Darin looks especially tough today. He's got a little bit of a shiner. Tell us a little bit about how this came about.
So I'm a part of a local mixed martial arts gym. It's called Smiley's Academy in Orange Park. Give them a little shout out. And, I go to boxing, I go to MMA class, I go to jiu-jitsu, and a few wrestling classes, but man, that's extremely tough. So I'm getting a little too old for the wrestling classes. But my goal this year was to do 40 classes. Because of my travel, it's hard to hit that, but I could do one a week, so 40 was my goal. I went ahead and set that, and Monday night I was in a full-on MMA class, and it's full everything, just like you'd see in the UFC, except for no contact to the head. But I mean, it's takedown, striking, kick, you name it. It's full go for an hour, and one of the rookies shot me with an elbow to the eye, so I forgave him, and I didn't give him one back, but, I slammed him.
I was going to say, you should see the other guy. But no, what drove you to want to do that? Is it just to get your exercise, or was it like maybe a creative way to do something differently?
To stay healthy and to, stay competitive, that type of thing. I've been an athlete my entire life, and a lot of my life is focused on others, from church to work to my family. It is focused on others. That's that time where I don't have to think. I go to that gym and I listen to the coach, and I'm just focused on what I'm doing and the output that I'm experiencing and the effort that I'm giving. And it's so awesome that you're so tired and beat up sometimes. I drive home and I literally don't even listen to the radio. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to listen to the radio. I'm so exhausted, but man, that feels so good. And when I pull back into my driveway, I'm good. I'm ready.
What happened to Alabama football?
This season?
Yeah, this season. Yeah, well, the Georgia Bulldogs got you 2 years in a row here.
Well, I tell you, it's simple. It's in which they will. It's the you bring in so many of these studs and so many of these players. They're not staying 4 and 5 years. They're coming 1 year, 2 years, then they're going to the NFL. And Alabama became that. They knew if they could go get on the field 1 or 2 years, they were going to the NFL. And so you're no longer grooming those players, and it's hard to replace them every single year. So you're going to have ups and downs with that. And that's really what's happened to Alabama. And the NIL has changed everything. The name, image, and likeness.
Changed the entire game.
Changed it all. So schools in the past that might not have had a chance to grab those, players that Alabama would have taken, they're getting those players now. So the pool is getting more evened out. It's getting, a little more shallow for the Alabama. So that's what's happened. So, Nick is going to have to adjust to that and deal with that. And he will. He's got that type of mind. I don't know if you saw the interview when David Pollock said that Georgia has taken over college football. You should Google it.
I did not see that.
Look on his face was like, just disgust. That's
a Georgia Bulldog saying
right.
that.
When I saw that interview, I was like, oh man, he done poked the beast. He done stoked the fire.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I feel like if NIL was around when you were playing college football, that you would have killed that. You would have really, really had a good time with that.
I would have got some groceries or something out of it at least. I was in Daytona with one of our shop owners a couple of weeks ago, and Ed Reed just became the head coach of Bethune-Cookman. And we do cooperative advertising with our customers, and this shop had 4,000. And I said, look, you put in 4, we put in 4. We've got $8,000. Let's go get a player and have him waving a sign out here or something. And let's get a part of this NIL. He wanted nothing to do with
it. But it's Ed Reed. We could meet Ed Reed.
I'm telling you, man. It was a transmission shop. I was like, man, that you'd be on TV as the first NIL sponsor for Bethune-Cookman. Obviously it wasn't a good idea. So.
Oh, well, it's all fun. I think talk about goals, right? Like I think we could take so much from athletics and you have to implement into your daily life. And I don't think it's just athletics. You could look at any successful person who's probably had some goals and some ambitions to be able to get to where they're at. And there's a lot of books, a lot of podcasts, a lot of papers, anything you want. The internet's a beautiful thing in that regard. You can get resources and really dive into detail on a lot of this stuff. And Darin's done the research. He's looked at a lot of different avenues and ways to set goals. And then what you do better than anybody else is execute on those goals. So I appreciate you joining us once again, now recurring guest, Darin Damron, and I can't wait for the next one that we do because they're always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jay. It's been awesome, and I'll leave you with this thought. You bring up athletics and you talk about lessons. And I played many years. I played college football for 4 years. I played arena football for 9 years. I played 1 year up in Canada. So I've experienced a lot of football. And my college defensive line coach taught me an extremely valuable lesson my senior year. And we were playing this team, and they were running a trap play, and I was defensive end. I was supposed to wrong shoulder, make that running back bounce, and our pursuit and flow of the defense make the tackle. Well, I knew what play was coming. I jab stepped and swam the guard that was pulling on me and tackled the running back for about a 7-yard loss. And we're watching film on that, and I was being cocky, and I thought coach was going to congratulate me. And he said, Damron, what'd you do wrong here? And I got a little offended, and I said, players make plays, right? Players make plays. Well, he was a great leader. He didn't chew me out in front of everybody. He paused the film and asked me to step outside. So I step outside, and I'm this 6'4", 300-pound defensive lineman. He was not that big. He was like a cornerback in college, but he was coaching us. And he was looking up at me, and he said, Damron, your physical ability and your knowledge is up here. Not everybody's abilities and knowledge in that room is at that level. So we have to teach things to do it the right way. And you as a leader on this team have to do these things the right way, because out of the 17 defensive linemen in that room, you're probably the only person that could have made that play. And that's not how we teach. We got to teach it where everybody can have success. And I have never forgot that lesson. And it always reminds me when I'm leading people or working with my teammates or other people at all, is I've got to meet them where they're at and teach them in such a way that they can have success, not try to make them what I am or try to get them to do what I do.
That's a pretty darn good way to end this thing. Great lesson. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for joining us on the podcast yet again. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you, sir.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.